Oh, hello, and welcome to your online classroom here at Eastern West Virginia Community and Technical College. I am excited to speak and interact with everybody in here, either if you are a new student or a returning one at the college. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nathan Van Ranken, and I will be your instructor this semester, but I will also serve as your guide and mentor as part of your learning journey. I am the full-time science faculty here at the college and the coordinator of the Biological Environmental Technology program, where we use environmental science concepts to learn more about the natural world and be able to solve the problems right here in Appalachia. Now, I see you have signed up for GSC 120, or Concepts in Environmental Science, a foundational science course. But what is environmental science? Now, this is a question to you, as many students tend to have a general idea of what environmental science is, especially in the recent years, because it's a hot topic. But I want to ask some questions. Have you ever really wondered about the natural and physical world around you? Have you asked questions like, why during the summer does it seem always hotter and drier in areas that you didn't expect it, especially out here in the Appalachian region, where we have lush forests, but during the summer times, they always seem to be drier and warmer every single year. And our winters seem to be shorter and less severe from year to year. When we look at areas where there's industry, such as some of the coastal factories of Louisiana, the chemicals that are being produced, what is the impact of those chemicals on the surrounding air regions? The smokestacks, they have exhaust. What's inside that exhaust, and how does that affect our planet? Or the residuals as they enter the water supply, how does it affect the health of the workers that would work at that factory? What about in recent times in California? What's the cause of those wildfires that are still burning at the time of this recording? These are the fundamental questions that environmental scientists ask themselves, as these are what we call phenomena. And phenomena is really any scientific event. In this case, the phenomena that you'll encounter in this class are those found relating to the environment, a construct of how we view the natural world and our role as humans in it. So in our first week here in the class, we are going to start off with the fundamentals of environmental science. We're going to define what the environment actually is from a science perspective and use that as a way to grow your scientific literacy, how you view science, and how do you stay current with it, but also your scientific awareness. Are you aware that there are phenomena that drives our body of knowledge about the environment? And we can do this in a variety of different ways. And I think one of the most interesting way, at least from my perspective, and hopefully for yours, is let's take a look at the history of environmental science. And we're going to investigate different periods of time where our understanding of the environment and humans' roles within it have dramatically changed, going from prehistory, where we have a very strong tie as humans to the environment, because that's where the food comes from and the resources to build our early settlements. And then we can move into close to the industrial age of around the 1700s. And how did we view the environment then? Was it full of unlimited resources? Or maybe we should start thinking more cautiously on how those resources are being utilized. And then we can move into more recent eras of environmental science, like the progressive era with the establishment of the National Park Service, and even into the modern understanding of environmental science. And that it's a global effort to maintain what we call sustainability, a way for us to maintain the environment for future generations that have yet to come. So that's what our main goal for this week is: how do we use the environment to communicate about the world around us? So if you have any questions about the material this week, remember, I'm always available to reach out. At the start of this class, you'll get a copy of my syllabus, which is a guide on how to be successful in the class. It's going to have your schedule of the different topics we're going to cover, and the grading procedures, but most importantly, my open office hours and ways to contact me. I am here to support you in your learning journey through email, in-person visits, and also virtual video chats. And come with me on an adventure, if you will, to learn about our little blue planet floating in space, and what stories can it tell? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to class here in GSC 120, or Concepts in Environmental Science, where we want to be able to take a look at the environment around us and ask ourselves questions about how do we interpret it and solve common problems, dealing with very specific phenomena that troubles us as humans, as we are one component of a much broader scope. So this week we are going to cover a new phenomena, or at least cover a topic related to many of the phenomena encountered later in the class, but at a fundamental skill set level. And we want to be able to delve into this topic because it's not just about protecting the environment, it's about understanding our moral responsibility. That's right. We're going to be talking about environmental ethics this week. So, what exactly is environmental ethics? Well, it's the study of our relationship to the natural world. We learn that we're, again, one component of many that live in the natural world around us. But we are the only organisms on our planet that have very deep morals and philosophy. And we need to be able to work with that to solve environmental problems. Because it's a way for us to guide ourselves on decision. It challenges us to think beyond our human needs and consider the intrinsic value of ecosystems, animals, and natural resources available. We have to ask ourselves questions like, are we the caretakers of Earth, or are we just simply utilizing her resources and moving on? These are the big questions that I want you to consider as you're working your way through the module this week, because it relates to sustainability. and how we need to view the environment. Well, let's think of a generalized connection. Um, when we connect this to sustainability, sustainability is all about being able to make decisions that are sustainable and allow for one generation to sustain themselves into the next generation and have a place to live in the environment. These decisions allow people, economies, and ecosystems to thrive when the changing climate or relationship with nature dramatically changes for either the negative or a ongoing positive impact in other areas. These are things that we need to consider. And sustainability, it's more than just preserving resources. It's about creating a balance and ensuring that all living things can coexist in harmony. And when we make decisions in terms of sustainability, it's without a strong ethical foundation. And sustainability can become just another buzzword in a time when environmental science and the concepts and phenomena that we're learning in this class is a very contentious and hot button issue. But it's more than just a buzzword. It's driven by short-term gains rather than long-term stewardship. But we have to ask ourselves, who gets to pick? What's the cost? And so that's why it brings me back to what we must talk about this week, representation. You see, we're not the only people that utilize the environment. We need to think of other cultures, indigenous individuals, or those that are less represented communities have long since been stewards of the land. And they practice sustainability in ways modern science is just learning about and being able to describe and understand as it relates to phenomena, a different perspective, if you will, from, say, rotational farming techniques to water conservation practices. These communities hold a wealth of knowledge that they're willing to share with us. We have to be able to ethically acquire that knowledge and be able to deploy it to solve environmental science problems. Yet their voices are often underlooked, and so are the solutions. And that is a problem we need to be able to acknowledge in a fair, effective solution, but also how are indigenous and less represented communities actually impacted by those who are dominating the environment and negatively impacting it? Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine an environmental scientist, and he's working to combat deforestation in, say, South America, where we have expansive rainforests. It's where we get a lot of our hardwood. We get certain types of medicines, even energy resources. That scientist is wanting to learn more about the rate of deforestation so that way more sustainable practices could be put into those regions to make it um, less impacted by us as humans. But a typical approach might involve drafting the policies and just restricting logging and creating protected areas. And that sounds like a really great idea. But here's the ethical challenge, though. What happens to the indigenous communities who depend on the forest for their way of life? Do we just push them out in the name of conservation, or do we make a fair or sustainable pathway so that way they can retain their livelihoods and connection to the land rather than push them out and exclude them from what they've always had access to? So that's here where environmental ethics really comes in. A truly ethical scientist must start by engaging with local communities, learning from their knowledge and understanding their needs instead of imposing a one size fits all solution. Really, we're going to want to learn on how we can collaborate and develop these sustainable solutions. To solve problems, or at least learn about the history of a region before we act impulsively. to attempt to establish a long-term sustainability plan. And these are things we have to consider. This is what makes environmental ethics such a powerful decision-making tool. It's not about saving the planet. I mean, we that's ultimately our goal, but it's about ensuring that the solutions we create work for everyone. Because the truth is, we have a role to play in sustainability, with the most effective solutions being the most diverse at the table for these negotiations, solving the problem. So, my challenge for you is the next time you think about an environmental issue, ask yourself, all throughout this lesson, who is being impacted and how? We learned this in our module this week when we look at the Klamath River Valley and learn on how the indigenous populations' cultural practices are sustained, but the Klamath needs to be repurposed for urban sprawl. And how does these two worlds conflict with each other? And that our decisions cannot exist in a vacuum. We have to consider larger parts of a whole story. And that includes those who have lived here for centuries to people like you and me who are recent additions to the local environment. So thank you again, once again for joining me this week as we continue on our learning journey here in GSC 120, Concepts in Environmental Science. Um, I hope this module will be actually eye-opening because it involves more the social side of environmental science, whereas we're eventually going to start transitioning into the science side. So that way you get a complete, well-rounded picture of the discipline and how we need to view our decision making, both morally and scientifically. And if you're interested in topics like these, feel free to share them with your friends and your family, and use it as a way to shape your future in sustainability. And stay curious here on our dynamic planet Earth. If you want to be able to work on this week's assignment, feel free to swing on by. I have my open office hours where you can set up a video chat. You can send me an email. Come by my office. I have plenty of snacks and coffee for you, or tea, soda, whatever you're looking for. And we can work on this material together. Because remember, I'm here to support you in your learning journey. Thank you and have